Lisa, what does your current life right now look like?
Jesse, I run two multiple six-figure businesses and I travel all over the world.
That's amazing. We're going to dive into that, but one last question before we get started. I heard you got a new project. Briefly tell me what that's about.
I just started a brand new business called the Toke Agency, and we are a cannabis marketing agency. And it's women led, run, owned, and it is so cool and groovy.
I'm so excited for you. This is Jesse Ray with the Growth House podcast. I'm here with my friend Lisa Williams. Lisa, it's been about a year since you came out to immersion to our Growth House Mastermind, and I'm so excited. I'm excited just to catch up, honestly.
I am so excited. And I love that you're doing this 1 year later because we could go back and we could say, this is where I was and this is where I am. Oh my gosh, how fun.
So actually, let's do that. That's a
Okay.
perfect transition, and then I'll dive into some of the things that you're doing. So
Okay.
where were you last year, November of 2022?
So when I came to the Growth House to
First of all, this
immersion,
real quick, explain how that all happened. I
okay.
love it.
Okay. So we connect on LinkedIn and I invite you as a guest on my podcast
Mhm.
and we're chit-chatting on my podcast. And then you invite me as a guest to come to immersion to be, just one of the speakers and to just dive into everything you're doing. And literally 2 weeks later, I'm showing up. Okay, I have to say, I'm 55. There are mostly 20 and 30-year-olds running around the Growth House. It's not like I couldn't hang, but it's definitely a younger crowd.
You definitely hug. I was gonna say, you were amazing. We loved having you there. There's so
Oh,
much
thank
that you
you.
shared with us, especially in the marketing tip. But just your energy and your presence. I know so many people really related to you and just gravitated towards you. So bottom of my heart, none of that could have happened without people like you coming and just pouring into people. So just want to say thank you so much.
And Jesse, I met so many amazing people and still to this day talk to them, communicate with them, keep in touch with them. And I love how you were the catalyst for putting all that together. And I love that you're that conductor and that facilitator because that is what the world needs. We need people to bring people together. And I think one of the things I want to say, because this was last year, so the end of 2022, it probably was the first year that people started really diving into to being in person and being live again after a couple years. And what a great takeaway to have that energy all in one place.
I love it. And actually, I'm just curious. I would love just your insight. A year removed, what did that experience look like for you? Everyone else, I feel had a certain perspective and experience while doing that Growth House Mastermind,
Hmm.
which this was a 21-day mastermind. My first ever I put together. And I always go to people I'll teach you how not to do your first
How
mastermind.
not to don't do it for 21 days.
I was exhausted by day 14. But
Yeah.
what was the
So
experience like for you?
Um, okay, first of all, I loved the energy. I loved that people were there to connect, to learn, to grow, to experience. And I had so many great takeaways, just as much as I was able to give. I mean, I loved that I got to connect with people who have built 7, 8 figure brands. I love that I got to connect with people who are just starting their business. I love that I got to pour into other people and that they wanted to learn from me. Oh my gosh,
Mm,
that right there was huge. I mean, you don't really think you have a lot to teach until you realize you have a lot to teach.
100%. I love
Yeah.
that. I think for me, a lot of people who are just starting off and want to help other people, even people who don't have a coaching business, but they're how do I get people, how do I help people out? I'm you got to realize a lot of imposter syndrome. And this is what helped me. all you got to do is be like 1 to 2 chapters ahead of someone to be able to help someone. And honestly, you're probably the most relatable because you just went through that stuff that sucked. You were just there. You were just like, I was in that position. Like, I don't know if I can buy a house, but I still remember the mental thought process. It can relate to someone in that position. Like, guys, it's not that hard. I bought 2 houses in 10 months. Yeah, that 5 years beforehand was tough, but let me help you skip all that and get to the point where I'm at mentally. So I love that. I want to
Yeah.
dive into what you just said right when we started the podcast. You're traveling the world with 2 6-figure businesses. How is that possible? How do you do that?
Okay. So, everyone thinks when you become an entrepreneur that you're going to just lay on the beach all day long and your business is just going to rack up and you're going to go cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And that is so not the case. However, I wanted to create a life by design. And for me, I wanted to experience as much as I could experience because we're here for a blip of a second. I mean, if you think about it. And what do I want the rest of my life to look like? I had this opportunity to raise a family and I'm divorced. And so, be in a marriage and all of that stuff. And so what do I want the rest of my life to look like? And I want to take away so many experiences. I want to just pack them on as much as I can. And so, how do I do that? Well, I run a business, and how do I travel? And believe it or not, people think, oh, how can you travel? And how expensive is that? Well, there's ways to do it that are super thrifty.
Ooh,
So,
okay. Can we break down some of those ways? This
yes,
is a good point right
yes,
here. I
because
want to
this
learn.
is really good.
Okay.
And this is like the most savvy thing that I had thought of ever. And it's a brilliant concept. So 2 years ago, I went to Costa Rica and I lived and worked in Costa Rica for almost 90 days. I rented a condo. At that point, it was early 2021. Things were not that expensive. And I just did it. I just did it on a whim. I paid for everything and I just did it. Well, I met a guy out there who had rented his house out to a traveling nurse while he was doing the same thing that I was doing, living and working in Costa Rica.
Love it.
And so I kind of took his concept to the next level. So I came back, thought about how can I travel more and how can I get my expenses covered and travel for free. So I joined this app called Trusted House Sitter. And you have to go through background checks and all this rigmarole, but it's almost like picture a dating app. So you have pet sitters, house sitters that are trying to be matched up with homeowners and pet owners. And it's all over the world. It's worldwide. And you get to go. I would open the map and I would say, where do I want to go? What state, city, country do I want to travel to? And you go apply to pet sit at these people's homes. So you're going into, and I'll tell you some of the places I went to: Bend, Oregon, Maui,
Beautiful.
Aspen, Colorado, Santa Barbara. I mean, places that I wouldn't be able to spend more than a couple of days at in a hotel or an Airbnb, but I'm living there in their homes, taking care of their pets while they're traveling. So I get a free place to stay because no money exchanges hands, and they
Really?
get free pet sitting. And it's all done through that app. I mean, I should
What?
be a spokesperson for them because seriously, when I tell this story, people are just mesmerized. Okay, so that's one thing I did.
Hold on, we gotta
So,
stay here for a second. I didn't know we were
okay,
gonna talk about this. This is very interesting. So,
okay,
what's the process like? You obviously have to get a background check. No
yeah,
money exchanges, literally house for babysitting their animals.
right.
What's usually the length of stay? Is it something that people say, "Hey, 4 days, I'm gone," or is it like, "Hey, I'm going to be gone for at least a month"?
I
What's it look like?
stayed in Maui for almost 12 weeks
What, for free?
for free.
With the dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Oh, I would totally love to do
So,
that.
so it just depends,
Yeah.
because you have to be very strategic. I did it for 8.5 months solid. Like I only came
Mm,
home for maybe 3 or 4 days twice. through that whole 8 months, I was home maybe 8 days total. So you have to be very strategic, Jesse. So I wasn't as strategic as I would be now. But when I opened up the map, I'm like, oh, I want to go here and I want to go here and I want to go here. And I just started applying. And some of the more popular places like Maui or Bend, Oregon, or Aspen get lots of inquiries. And so you have to stand out in your approach to, like, when you send them a private message, what are you going to do? How are you going to, what's your pitch? And also, you do pay a fee to belong to this platform, and they, as homeowners or pet owners, also pay a fee. But so that's how the platform makes their money. But then no money exchanges hands in between the pet owner and the pet sitter.
Okay. So what was the app called? And then real quick, what was your little pitch that made you stand out?
Trusted House Sitter is the app. And my pitch was, I had a lab, for a family dog, for 14 years that I had put down recently, before that. And so my pitch was, rather than getting another dog, I wanted to travel and love on other people's pets while I did that.
That's good.
So, yeah.
You sent a picture with like you and a couple dogs?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I would do.
I mean, and then you have references. And then because I did it so often and for so long, of course you get your reviews, and I have like multiple 5-star reviews. And so that's the first thing I did. Okay. So I'm staying at places that I want to go visit for free. Now, I'm also staying in a home, so I'm not really having to buy staples as far as groceries. So I could just buy what I need. I could cook there at their house.
So smart.
I could set up, Wi-Fi. I could set up my desk. I could set up my makeshift office, all the stuff. And then I'm surfing, I'm paddleboarding, I'm skiing, I'm scuba diving, I'm hiking, I'm doing all the things while I'm in Maui. Every Friday was my paddleboard day. And so I walked to the beach every Friday, grabbed my paddleboard. I was out there before 7 a.m. Before the waves came, and I'm out there paddleboarding in the ocean in Maui. I mean,
you just got to watch a couple dogs.
Yeah, just have to watch a couple dogs, take care of them, walk them, feed them, love on them. I mean, who doesn't want to do that?
I love that.
So,
that's amazing. That's
okay. So I did that. Then, to cover my expenses here at my house, I rented my house out on Airbnb. So then that income covered my mortgage and my utilities. So now I have very little expenses. I'm traveling. Also, let's remember, we had 2 years of basic lockdown, if you want to call it that. So I'm using my credit card to charge everything and get all these miles, and I'm not using them. So I'm using miles. I'm using Trusted House Sitter, and I'm renting my house out on Airbnb. My biggest expense at most of these places was renting a vehicle.
That's right. So food and vehicle, that's pretty much all you had to pay for.
Yeah.
And you were able to set the house up so it would be like your new office.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think I stayed at a place less than 7 to 10 days. So you're there. You're making yourself at home.
Gosh, I love this. Okay, that's definitely a little like a section I'm going to cut and put on YouTube because that was amazing.
Okay.
But all right, so I guess, you were actually, real quick, where were you last year for a year, and then fast forward to what you're doing now?
So all that traveling that I told you, I did most of that last year.
Okay.
Fast forward to June of this year, I adopted and rescued a puppy myself.
Oh, what kind?
She's a white lab, and I would bring her on here, but she would get super excited and it would disrupt the podcast. So she's in her crate sleeping right now, but she's 8 months old and she has stole my heart. So I kind of slowed down on my traveling this year. However, now I am putting my house and my dog up on Trusted House Sitter when I need to travel. So I'm bringing pet sitters into my home.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reversing it so that they could come take care of my pet while I travel occasionally.
And you're in Dallas?
And I'm in Dallas.
Well, I have to go to Dallas soon, so I'll let you
And
know.
come take care of my sweet baby
I
girl.
love it. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Okay. So where am I? So last year, did all that traveling, grew my business, multiple six figures. And this year, I really honed in on removing myself from a lot of the day-to-day activities and
Mm,
really focused on becoming the CEO of the company rather than the nitty-gritty working.
mhm,
So I have a team and I was able to pull myself away, which was so incredibly hard, Jesse, because you don't want to give things up, right?
mhm.
And we think only we can do it, right? And
Yes.
so so letting some of that go and letting my team take over more and more of the day to day and the content creation and all that stuff, and pulling myself away to where I'm being the connector and I'm bringing the business in. And that was one thing that I did this year. Second thing I did is I joined a mastermind at the beginning of the year and connected with 15 amazing women entrepreneurs who are in all different spaces, all different places, all different locations. But the power of asking a question and getting 14 brilliant responses
Mm,
is there's there's nothing to describe that. There's
mhm.
nothing to describe that.
Let's stay
So,
there. Let's stay there real quick
okay,
because I don't think people understand the power of masterminds. I was just at one last night, and most of these people are 7 and 8 figure business owners. Kind of snuck my way in there.
love
And
it.
they are incredible people with a heart to serve. And like you said, you have a question, they have someone that they know that has the answer, or they have the answer themselves. And even someone I was talking to, I had a deep conversation with, like, Jesse, get clarity, and then I can help you. I wasn't going to do that unless a person like that, who I respect and admire, said that. I'm like, you're right. Let me go do that first. So talk to me about the power of masterminds and even just mentorship in general. Because I guess they are separate, mentorship versus masterminds.
Sure. So, I paid high dollar to belong to this mastermind. And I have no problem sharing. It's Jasmine Star. She is somebody that I have followed and really respected in the social media industry for several years. And she hosted her first ever mastermind. And you
Mm-hmm.
had to apply and you had to interview, and it was a process. And she was only picking 15 women and she had 2,000 applicants.
Wow.
2,000. So I would say that I had to really stand out. 15 of us had to stand out, right? The other thing that happens at the beginning is you start to hear everybody's story in this mastermind, what their business looks like, what their career path looks like, what they're bringing in, what their revenue and their profit, and you're really getting down to the nitty gritty. And sometimes you get this huge imposter syndrome because you're like, I don't belong here.
Mm,
These people are far and above more successful than I am.
mm-hmm.
And then you have to realize we're all in the same room.
Mm,
We all got invited to the same room.
yeah.
So how can if you're thinking I don't belong here, then you're going to miss the takeaway of what you spent the money to belong there. But a mastermind, to me, the power of a mastermind is there's a facilitator, Jasmine Star, who brought this group of people together. So we have to trust that she's going to bring the right people into the room,
Yeah.
right? And then you might have these questions. So when we did our live event and we went to Newport Beach and we're all, sharing, and we all have our 15 minutes of fame to talk and get feedback and all of that stuff. One of the things that I heard over and over was, Lisa, pull yourself out and become the CEO.
Mm,
Pull yourself out. And so that was a transition that I started working on this year. But I don't know that that would have happened, Jesse, had I not joined that mastermind and heard it from not just one person, but like maybe 5 or 6 people. And they're not telling me the way that I'm telling you. They're very compassionate and understanding. And look, this is what I used to do, and this is how I solved that problem. And so it's not getting one-on-one coaching. It's not getting one-on-one mentoring. It's getting feedback from um, a collective group where everybody has different experiences and different takeaways, and they all want for you what you want for yourself.
Gosh, this is so good. We can spend so much time on this. I just want to highlight a couple things for me personally. Like you said in the beginning, you get the imposter syndrome. Like, do I really belong in this room? And for me, there's a couple ways that I was able to think about it. And I'm like, masterminds, especially when it's an intimate gathering of people way more successful than me, I just go in there and realize and get a belief in myself because I'm so closely connected to these people. I'm like, they're no different than us. Like
None.
that's something that's probably the biggest thing. If anyone was to join a mastermind, join one just to accomplish that belief mindset that you get in there and you realize all these people have problems. Social media might not show it, but you get behind the curtain like, oh, what they went through, what I'm going through, they already went through. They were there.
Right. Right. And they're going through the same things that you're going through on a different level,
Different scale.
just different scale. Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
and if you're not asking the right questions and absorbing that information, you're missing the opportunities that put you in that room in the first place. And so I would say, and I'm sure you would say, we all belong in the room that we're in because we're there.
Absolutely. Nothing happens by accident. I don't believe
No,
that.
no,
Yeah,
we're there. So
absolutely.
we deserve to belong there. So give yourself permission to absorb everything you can from being in that room.
Yes. And I think another thing, when I get in those rooms, for me, I know you're the same way. How do I add value? I'm looking around the room. I haven't done business anywhere close as long as these people. So what am I going to do? For me, I'm bringing my energy. People want to be around people who are positive, energetic, and they honestly miss some of the stuff that happens in the beginning of business. So out of everyone in the room, they could have talked to, a lot of them wanted to talk to me. And it's just because that they've already solved my problem. So they're coming to help me. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Because they know that you're them however many months, years before, and they
Yes.
know that you have that drive, that desire, that determination, and you're coachable, and they want to pour into you.
100%. And I
Yeah.
guess one other thing I would add besides just bringing energy to the environment wherever you're at is also be a connector. I know some people have a more of a natural ability to do that, but if you're able to do that, that brings so much value. That's something that I pride myself in. Anyone I meet, I'm like, all right, is there someone I can help connect them to someone
You're
else?
the best connector ever.
I
Like you are
appreciate
the
that.
best connector. But yes, and I love to do that. I belong to a couple of networking groups, and I'm always thinking, oh, this person needs to know this person, and
Yes.
this person needs to be introduced to this person. And I'm always connecting people together if I could connect those dots.
Absolutely. Okay,
Yeah.
I know we had a little sidetrack about masterminds.
Okay.
So you joined the mastermind, and then what?
So, pulling myself out of the day to day, really trying to focus on how can I be more of the CEO and look for opportunities for acquisitions, for business acquisition, for client acquisition, for connecting, for networking, for getting our name out there. And then we had already been working with clients in the cannabis dispensary industry. We were already doing marketing for them, text and email, social media, content creation. And the cannabis industry is its own beast. It's highly regulated. There are some states that allow it, some states that don't. I mean, you know, all the stuff that goes with cannabis. And so we decided, let's take these cannabis dispensaries and let's separate what we do for It's Simply Digital, and let's create a whole new brand specifically for the cannabis industry.
Oh, wow.
So introducing the birth of the Toke Agency. And we're going to call it Toke. We call it Toke. I love this vibey, groovy brand. It's very throwback. It's very 70s. It's very hip. It's fun. It's groovy. It's so cool. And so I just came back from Vegas last week where I was at MJ BizCon, which is one of the largest
Yeah.
cannabis conferences.
AJ was there.
He was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's now is the time to immerse myself into the cannabis culture and the cannabis world. We are women led and operated, which is a big thing in the cannabis industry because it's like women in cannabis. Everybody wants to talk about that. We are one of the few marketing agencies that I know of that are specifically for cannabis for content creation. We don't do websites. We don't do website design, or we don't do programmatic ads. We do content creation and social media, text, email marketing, loyalty campaigns, all of that stuff. And so I don't know a lot of other cannabis marketing agencies that exist.
I can't think of any.
Yeah. So super unique.
Yeah.
Very niche. And that we just launched that website probably about 3 weeks ago. And Jesse, honestly, from birth to launching it, it took about 7-8 months to do that, from the concept of just brainstorming to putting it out into the world. But there's so many takeaways from that because we literally built a brand from start to finish. And it's so fun and so cool. And now we get to share that with the world. But we also get to have all that knowledge of building that brand from start to finish. And we get to use that to share with other clients, other customers, other prospects. We get to share all of that information because we know tried and true how to make it happen.
You guys are your own case study.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Walk me through some of those takeaways, because I know a lot of people are, in the Growth House community, they're either W-2 trying to transition into, full-time entrepreneur, or they're just starting. So this will be a great little conversation.
Okay. So first thing we did is we created a vision board. And on that vision board, we just threw up words that stuck, sticky words that we wanted to be related to. And then we took those words and we said, and you could do this with Chat GPT so easily, is how can I create colors that represent these words? So then now you're creating the words and you're adding the color, because color represents things. So we have like purples and greens, and the purples represent bold and fun, and then the greens represent the cannabis and the plant and all of that stuff. And so you have to think through, not only am I just magically creating a brand, but how does it make somebody feel? How does it look out into the world? And then we started creating logos and the message. What do we want the message to be? And again, we're brainstorming. So there's 3 of us. I have 2 other team members. And so we're literally just brainstorming on documents and figuring out what sticks and pulling things out to say, yeah, that doesn't sound so good, and this sounds really great. And then we started working with a designer to create the logo and based on the colors. So if you think about what we were trying to convey and what we were trying to create, was almost like Scooby-Doo subdued a little bit. So still that whole 70s vibe.
Hi, Scooby-Doo.
But right. Still that 70s fun vibe, but a little bit subdued. Not the oranges and the pinks and the, a little subdued. And it just took this constant refining of, okay, so now we've got the brainstorming, now we've got the colors, now we've got the logo. Now let's start thinking of the tone, the voice, the messaging. And we wanted it to be hip and groovy and 70s and throwback and old school. And so how do we start incorporating those words into it? And again, throwing them up on a vision board and seeing what sticks, and then working with a designer to start designing a website for us, working with a developer. Again, that doesn't really sound or feel or whatever, then starting to create the content that matches all the stuff that we just put together.
Mm,
And I mean, SWOT analysis, business plans,
yeah.
content strategy, marketing strategy, ideal client persona. I mean, it's a lot of work behind the scenes.
No, so much.
Yeah.
So I want to put you on the spot a little bit.
Okay.
Do you have some tips? I'm always like, I want people to take action on something that
Yeah.
we do in the podcast.
Yeah.
So whether it's the cannabis industry, which is, more niche, or we
Mm-hmm.
do more of your broader, simply digital clientele,
Mm-hmm.
if you had like two common mistakes that you see all these people who are trying to grow their brand on social media make, what would be those two mistakes? And then how would you do it different where they can take action on it possibly today and implement it into their business?
So you have to find your exact target audience, and you have to create, like, you have to think of it as you're only talking to one person. You're
Mm,
not talking to the millions of people that are out there on social media. You're talking to one person. And usually you're talking to yourself 6, 12, 18 months prior. So,
mm,
what are those things that you would want yourself to know, your prior self to know 6, 12, 18 months, and start thinking of creating content from that? The other thing I would say, Jesse, is when you know who your target audience is, really study them, study their psychological, their psychographics, their demographics, their where they hang out, what kind of content they like to consume, where do they go to get their news, their articles, their information, and really dive into their head, get into their head, and what do they want their life to look like?
mm,
That's what you want to share, is the transformation. What is it that they want their life to look like? And so when you know all this, then you know what platform that particular person hangs out on, whether it's X, whether it's Instagram, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever it is. And I would hone in and focus on that one platform. I would go all in 100% on that one platform. Later, you could create content for multiple platforms, but really hone in on that one platform. And the other takeaway with all this is create your content to show, here's where I was, here's where I am,
mm,
here's where you are, here's where you could be, here's the, and be real. Show up as yourself. Show up authentically. Nobody cares that you didn't edit the video. Nobody cares that you didn't put the right colored shirt on. Nobody cares about that. What they care about is they they're seeing themselves in you, and they want to know that if you could do it, they could do it.
mm.
Yeah.
Mic drop on that one, Lisa. Gosh.
Yeah.
Felt
Okay,
like
so
you're speaking to me.
you have to remind me what the second question was.
It was honestly just like the same question. It was just two
Two takeaways.
examples, two
Yeah.
takeaways, or like, what do you see people do wrong? Which I think you
Yeah.
mentioned a couple things there. One, inauthenticity.
Yes.
Is that a word?
Yeah.
So someone
Yes.
just like worrying too much about, oh, I got to have everything right before putting something out. Guilty. And so it's just like a lot of things that a lot of people just don't really. I guess you got to give two right there, because that's one of them. And then the first one
Right.
you said was figuring out who exactly are you talking to, and
Mm-hmm.
stop trying to talk to every single person.
Everybody.
Stop trying to get everyone to potentially like your brand, because you probably don't want it to be that way. You want just a die-hard fan base. And so,
Right. And
yeah.
Jesse, the other thing that you could think about this is fans don't equal money.
Mm,
Followers don't equal money.
yeah.
So, what if you had 1 million followers, but you barely sold anything?
I know people in that position.
I know people in that position.
Yeah.
Maybe every once in a great while you sell your product or your service. But
Mm-hmm.
what if you had one, and there's a book called 1,000 Fans, but what if you
Great book.
had 1,000 followers, but they were extremely honed in on your psychographics, demographics, your target audience? And
Mm.
what if you sold 90% every single day to these, 90% of your product or your service was sold all the time to these 1,000 people? Because they know, like and trust you. You've built authority with them. You've built that bond with them. They want to learn from you. They're your ideal client. And so, yes, I have followers on LinkedIn, and I appreciate each and every one of them. And I'm so grateful for all those connections. Not all of them are my ideal client.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really focus on followers or likes or shares. I really focus on who am I connecting with.
Mm. I love that. So to piggyback off of that, talk to me about LinkedIn, because you're
Yeah.
a complete, you're a beast on there. So tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about LinkedIn, and then I've like kind of a couple fun wrap up questions.
Sure. Okay, so LinkedIn happens to be where my ideal client hangs out, right?
Who is your ideal client?
A small business owner. Now, that's separate from the cannabis industry because there's other platforms for the cannabis dispensaries. So I'm going to focus on It's Simply Digital, but it's a small business owner, an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur who doesn't have a marketing department. They really need to focus on their business, and they don't want to focus on their marketing. They don't have the time, the energy, the resources. They don't want to create content. They don't want to manage the content creation, all of that good stuff. And so my LinkedIn journey has been like this. I showed up on LinkedIn in 2019 because I lost my job. I got fired from my job. And I was like, I'm going to go LinkedIn and look for a new job. So I'm scrolling through LinkedIn and realizing that there's creators out there. There's people putting content out that aren't just looking for jobs. I was like, wow, LinkedIn is a whole new world compared to what I knew it to be, which was a platform to look for a job.
Uh-huh.
And I had always wanted to start a podcast. It had been something that had been years in the making in my head. And so I had this space of not working. And I was like, I'm going to just start my podcast, and I'm going to start connecting with all these creators on LinkedIn. And what better way to start connecting than to invite them as guests on my podcast? And
So
so
smart.
that's kind of how the birth of my podcast started and how I started connecting. But then I found a job. I didn't really stay on LinkedIn 100% of the time. So it went like this. And then I would come on very sporadically and share things about social media or digital marketing or whatever. And now I'm working in that space, in the digital marketing space for an agency. But what happens is if I show up as me trying to build my personal brand, it's like, are they connecting with me because I work for this agency? Are they connecting with me because I work for this brand? And there was like a little bit of crossover and confusion. So I didn't show up consistently. And then I started building my side hustle. And I was like, I'm building my brand and my side hustle. And I started showing up every single day. So last year at this time, I made a conscious decision to show up on LinkedIn, creating content and connecting and DMing and getting to know people. And with the exception of maybe a handful of days, I've showed up every single day on LinkedIn, and I've doubled my connections. I've grown my business. I've made amazing friends like you and so many other people. I've hired a coach. I've coached people. I mean, if people think that LinkedIn is not a great place to start a business, they are incredibly mistaken, because there's so much opportunity there.
So true. And you said about this time last year. So what was the thing that inspired you to like go get a coach, start getting back into it and everything like that?
I just saw the potential, and I saw that I wasn't growing, and the people that I had connected with were growing, and they were putting content out all the time. And I took this course at the end of last year, on creating content on LinkedIn, met some fabulous people in that course. And it was like kind of like a master course or whatever. And it lasted, a couple of days. And then we all stayed connected through WhatsApp and did, meetings online and stuff, and met some. I have friends that I still stay in touch with through that connection. It's amazing how that all always works out, right? But that was my inspiration. I paid money
Mm-hmm.
to join this course, to learn how to show up consistently on LinkedIn. I felt like they held me accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm going to grow my brand. I'm going to grow my business. How does that look? So here we are. I've more than doubled my connections from where I started. I think I'm at like 22,000 connections right now. I think I started
Dang.
last year somewhere around 8 or 9,000 connections. Most of them were a lot of connections that I had built through work relationships. Not
Mm-hmm.
all of them, but a lot of them. So, yeah, I mean, and the fabulous thing today, Jesse, is if your content is your sales page, your content is your cold outreach, your content is the face of your brand. And
Mm-hmm.
so the goal is to attract the right people, the right audience to your content, and get them to raise their hand and say, I want to work with you. And I mean, just literally today, I had somebody book a call with me, and they follow me on LinkedIn. I was at the
Inbound leads.
airport in Vegas, leaving Vegas, and a guy was in the line next to me as we were getting ready to board the plane. He goes, "Is your name Lisa?"
No
And I
way.
said, "Yes." And he goes, "I recognize you from LinkedIn."
That's amazing.
Isn't that cool?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, here, last two questions. And
Sure.
like this went by too fast. I got so many more things I want to talk about.
I
So
know.
let's do like an in-person soon or even hop on
Yes.
another one of these calls. Because you like
Yes.
to travel and I need to
Yes.
come to Dallas. So we'll make that happen.
Okay.
Okay. So first of all, Growth House, we want to support you. We want to support everyone who's on our podcast. What are you looking for right now, connection wise? Maybe even again mention like who's your clientele, because I feel like a lot of people within our community might even be the target client for you.
Sure.
So you want to just let
Yeah.
us know how we can help you?
Yeah. So anybody who's looking to build a brand and start marketing your business and needs that taken off your plate. So I think you have to be at a certain level of income generation in order to start thinking about that. Because when you're first starting your business, you're everything. You're the
Mm-hmm.
janitor, you're the accountant, you're the window washer, you're everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have to be at a certain level of income where you're sitting here thinking, I want to get here, but I've got to take some of this stuff off my plate in order
Yeah.
to grow. And one of them is content creation and marketing. So that's one thing. The other thing is I'm always looking to connect with people in the cannabis industry. That's my new business and my new brand. So I would love to know dispensary owners, people who work with dispensary owners, anybody in the cannabis industry. That would be absolutely wonderful.
Hey, guess what? I'm pulling up a text with AJ and you right now, so I don't forget.
Awesome.
Boom.
Love
It's
it.
about to happen. Okay, lastly,
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty easy to find you because you can just Google your name and you'll probably pop up everywhere.
Yeah.
But specifically, how do people find you and how do people find your brand? And what platforms are you most active on if someone reaches out?
LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
Lisa Williams, It's Simply Digital, and the Toke Agency. And one of the great things, Jesse, is the Toke Agency and It's Simply Digital puts out its own content on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Really fabulous content for small businesses, entrepreneurs, and now cannabis dispensaries. And then Lisa is kind of that overarching, you know, person who represents marketing in general. And that's what I want to be known for. And the other thing I want to ask you is, how can I support you?
Great question. Oh man, I'm that person that always like wants to help and then I forget like what is my ask?
Yeah, what is your
Okay.
ask? How can I,
Yes.
Lisa Williams,
Yes.
support you, TheJesseRay?
So actually I have a great one and specific for you.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know if you still are or were in that mastermind with those amazing women.
Yeah.
I want to have more women on this podcast. I want to showcase more amazing women entrepreneurs. There's so many out there, but at the end of the day, a lot of them are clicked up in their groups. And I'm
Sure.
like, I want to start meeting more. I want to have them on the podcast. So if you can make some intros for me that you think would be amazing to have on the podcast, let's make that happen.
I can make that happen. And you know what, Jesse, would be even super more incredible is if you had a couple of us on.
Ooh.
And we
Little
did
round
like
table?
a round table.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've never done that on this software, but I'm down to try it. I'm sure I can.
You can. But anyway, yeah, I'll put you in touch with some people for sure. And I'll have to think through like the right people to put you in touch with. I already could think of 2 women that you would love to interview. Their energy is high. They have amazing businesses, great following. I already could think of 2.
I'm excited. Okay,
Yeah.
so actually, I just asked you how people connect with you on LinkedIn. Lisa Williams is Simply
Yes.
Digital. Anything else? Any last words for Growth House and our community that we're building out here?
Yeah. So we all have imposter syndrome. I have it. You have it. The people that are in your mastermind that are making 7, 8, 9 figures have it. The people that were in my mastermind that were making 7, 8, 9 figures have it. And so my takeaway is, and my challenge to myself, to you, to your community is, how can we have less of that? Every single day, how can we show up as our true selves, the best selves that we could be, and fear less every single day?
Mic drop, we're ending there. TheJesseRay, Growth House Podcast, Lisa Williams, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This was such an honor.
Oh, I love it. All right, take care, everybody.